Jefferson Academy wasn't just a school, it was a fortress of assumption built on old money and older prejudices. Within its ivy-clad walls, two dangerous beliefs thrived: that a black child whose father claimed Pentagon ties must be weaving fantasies, and that the polished floors were impermeable to the messy threats of the outside world. Both illusions were about to shatter. Spectacularly. 10-year-old Malik Carter straightened his tie, the knot feeling less like uniform compliance and more like a noose tightening with each glance from his classmates. Today was the day for what my parents do, and Malik planned to tell the truth, even if it felt like walking into a lion's den armed with a feather. His father, Jonathan, sat at the kitchen table, his quiet intensity focused on a tablet. He looked like command distilled into casual wear. "Ready for today?" he asked, sliding eggs towards Malik. "Yeah. We're talking about parents' jobs." Malik met his father's gaze. "I'm telling them about yours. At the Pentagon." A flicker in Jonathan's eyes, not surprise, but assessment. "Remember what I told you, son?" "I know, Dad," Malik recited the familiar mantra. "Some things are safer left unsaid." "Smart boy," Jonathan ruffled his hair, the gesture momentarily grounding Malik before the impending storm of disbelief at Jefferson. The school gates loomed, swallowing his father's modest sedan amidst a parade of gleaming luxury vehicles. Malik felt the usual stares, not hostile, just questioning. As if his scholarship presence was a typo in their perfect, privileged narrative. Ms. Anderson's classroom buzzed with parental boasts. Million-dollar mergers met senatorial meetings. Then came Malik. "My dad, Jonathan Carter," Malik began, his voice small but determined, "works at the Pentagon." Silence. Then a snicker from Tyler Whitman, whose father practically owned the county. It spread like poison ivy. Ms. Anderson, draped in designer neutrality, let a condescending smile bloom. "The Pentagon, Malik? How imaginative. What does he do there? Polish the missiles?" Laughter rippled through the room. Heat crawled up Malik's neck. "He works in security operations." "I'm sure he does," Ms. Anderson purred, dripping disbelief. "Perhaps next time, we stick closer to reality." Malik stood frozen, humiliation a physical weight. His friend Ethan tried to defend him, mentioning an ID badge, but Ms. Anderson shut him down with the swiftness of practice dismissal. The message was clear: truth had no currency here unless it fit their narrow worldview. That afternoon, Malik recounted the ordeal to his father, the words tumbling out in a rush of shame and anger. "She made me look like a liar, Dad. In front of everyone." Jonathan's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. "I see," was all he said, but the calm was deceptive, like the quiet before a storm. Later that evening, Malik overheard fragments of a hushed, urgent phone call from his father's study, words like implications, address immediately, handle it personally. He saw the black SUV parked across the street again, a silent, unnerving sentinel. Parents' Day arrived a week later, thick with anticipation. Ms. Anderson wore her certainty like a tailored jacket, clearly expecting Malik to arrive alone, tail between his legs. Then Jonathan Carter walked in. He wasn't the janitor or clerk their prejudice had conjured. He wore a suit that whispered quiet authority, his presence commanding instant attention. On his lapel, stark against the dark fabric, was an ID badge, the eagle, the shield, the unmistakable emblem of the Department of Defense, Pentagon Division. Higher clearance than most in the room could even comprehend. Ms. Anderson's condescending smile froze, then fractured. The color drained from her face. "Miss Anderson," Malik said, the vindication tasting sweet but suddenly complex. "This is my dad, Jonathan Carter." Jonathan extended a hand, his grip firm, his eyes missing nothing. "Miss Anderson, I've heard things about your classroom." Before she could stammer a reply, the door opened again. Not another parent, but a man in a suit, radiating urgency. He leaned in, whispering to Jonathan. Malik saw his father's face shift, the paternal warmth replaced by the focused intensity of the strategist Malik rarely glimpsed. "Excuse me," Jonathan said, his voice polite but leaving no room for argument. "Government business calls." He stepped into the hallway, conferring with not one, but now 3 serious-looking individuals. Inside, the classroom air crackled. Whispers replaced boasts. Eyes darted between Malik, the bewildered Ms. Anderson, and the growing cordon of quiet professionals outside. Then, the principal hurried in, looking rattled. "Mr. Carter," he announced, trying to regain control, "has graciously agreed to speak briefly about security awareness." Jonathan returned, stepping to the front. The room fell silent. "Prejudice," Jonathan began, his voice calm but carrying undeniable weight, his gaze sweeping the room before landing briefly on Ms. Anderson. "Judging situations or people on assumptions rather than facts, it creates blind spots. And blind spots," he paused, letting the words hang, "are dangerous." His phone vibrated. A discreet glance. The shift was instantaneous, invisible to most, but Malik knew it, the tightening around the eyes, the razor-sharp focus. Danger wasn't just a concept his father discussed, it was here. "No." "Speaking of vigilance," Jonathan said smoothly, turning to the principal, "could I have a word outside?" As they stepped out, the school's PA system crackled. "Attention, we are initiating a precautionary lockdown. Remain in your classrooms." Panic flickered through the room. Jonathan re-entered, his authority absolute now. "Everyone stay calm. Follow instructions." He moved to Malik's side. "Stay with me, son." Through the window, Malik saw them, more agents converging, establishing a perimeter. The threat wasn't theoretical anymore. It had followed his father here, breaching the impenetrable walls of Jefferson Academy. The truth Malik had tried to share, the truth they had mocked, had walked through the door wearing a security clearance and trailing a national security crisis right behind it. Vindication was eclipsed by a dawning, terrifying reality. His father wasn't just there to prove a point. He was there to neutralize a threat that had targeted a school where no one believed the danger until it was locking the doors from the inside. And Malik, caught between relief and fear, finally understood the weight of the world his father carried, and why some truths, until absolutely necessary, were indeed safer left unsaid.